Hello, my name is Ethan Brooks, 37 years old, living in Reno, Nevada. I'm not the type to talk about myself, but if you're here ready to listen, I'll try to tell my story as honestly as I can. My life, how should I put it, is like a hand dealt at the shabbiest casino in Reno, full of unexpected moves, sometimes terrible cards. But I still try to play the best I can with what I've got. I live for my family, for Hannah, my wonderful wife, and Lily, our 10-year-old daughter, smart, strong, and always melting my heart with her smile. But to tell this story, I need to take you back deep into the days that shaped who I am, my family, and the scars I carry. Reno, if you've never been, is a strange city. It's called the biggest little city in the world, where neon lights from casinos glitter day and night. But drive a few miles out to the suburbs, and you'll find barren mountains and quiet roads, as if time forgot them. I grew up here in a big house in the Sparks neighborhood. Once the pride of the Brooks family. My father, Henry Brooks, was a titan in the construction industry during the 80s and 90s. His company, Brooks & Sons, built resorts, hotels, and upscale residential areas in Nevada. Money flowed like water, and as a kid, I thought I was living the true American dream. Our house back then was a sprawling mansion, complete with a pool, tennis court, and an entertainment room my friends called a private club. My mother, Clara, was the heart of that home. She always knew how to make things warm, from laughter-filled weekend dinners to summer afternoons when she taught me and my younger brother Caleb how to make chocolate chip cookies. Mom was gentle but strong, always keeping the family together, even though Dad was often away for work. Caleb, 3 years younger than me, was a mischievous but lovable kid. He'd follow me around, dragging me into basketball games or hide-and-seek in the backyard. Back then, I thought our family was invincible. But life, as I've said, is like a game of cards, and sometimes you lose big before you even realize what's happening. When I was 18, my father's company started to crumble, a series of bad investments, real estate projects in Las Vegas, massive loans to expand the business dragged Brooks & Sons into the abyss. My father, a proud man who always believed he could outsmart any risk, refused to admit defeat. Instead, he turned to the casinos, convinced his luck would turn. He started betting large sums at first to recoup losses, but it soon became an addiction. Caleb, only 15 at the time, got swept up in it, too. He began sneaking into casinos with fake IDs, gambling, and quickly spiraled into the same vortex as Dad. My mother tried to keep the family from falling apart. She took a part-time job at a small bookstore, attempting to offset the debts Dad and Caleb racked up. But there was little she could do when the two men in the family were consumed by delusions of a big win that would change everything. Savings dried up. The mansion was sold to pay debts, and we moved to a smaller house in East Reno. I, then in college, had to drop out halfway through to work and help Mom. I took any job I could, waiting tables, delivering packages, working as a laborer on small construction sites. That was the first time I felt the cost of irresponsibility. Fast forward to now, I'm a 37-year-old man living in a modest but cozy house in Reno's suburbs. I'm a manager at a small construction company, not Brooks & Sons, but another one where I've worked hard to build a career from scratch. Hannah, my wife, is a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital. She's a strong woman who always knows how to make me laugh, even on the worst days. She has warm brown eyes and a smile that makes me feel like everything will be okay. Lily, our daughter, is the light of my life. Lily has her mother's sensitivity and a bit of my stubbornness, but above all, she's a deeply loving child who knows how to make others feel cherished. Our little family isn't wealthy, but we're happy. We have each other, and that's enough to make me feel like the luckiest man alive. But the shadow of the past has never truly left me. My father, Henry, now 65, still wanders the casinos of Reno and Las Vegas. He lives in a rundown apartment, reeking of cigarettes and cheap whiskey. Caleb, now 34, isn't much better off. He picks up odd jobs but spends most of his time in casinos, chasing pipe dreams of hitting it big. And both are deep in debt to loan sharks, and more than once, they've called me, begging for money to pay off debts or start over. I've learned to say no, but each time, it feels like a part of my heart is being crushed. My mother, Clara, is the only one keeping me tied to what I call my extended family. She's 62 now, but illness has made her look older than her years. 6 months ago, doctors diagnosed her with late-stage lung cancer. The news hit me like a punch to the chest. I still remember the day she called me to the hospital, her voice weak but trying to stay calm. "Ethan, don't worry, I've lived a full life." But I know she's scared, not for herself, but for what she's leaving behind, for me, for Lily, and even for Dad and Caleb, though they've never deserved it. Hannah and I take turns caring for Mom at the hospital. Lily visits often, bringing colorful drawings to cheer her up. Once, Lily drew a picture of our family, me, Hannah, her, and Mom, standing in a field of flowers under a sunset. I'll take this picture with me to remember everyone, Mom said, her eyes shining even as her body weakened day by day. But Henry and Caleb have never shown up, not a single visit, not a single call. They're too busy with their card games, their drinks, and their empty promises of starting over. I don't know how to feel about them anymore. Some nights, sitting by Mom's hospital bed, I wonder if I'm doing the right thing by still calling them family. I'm angry at them, but deep down, I still hope they'll change someday. Hannah says I'm too soft-hearted, but she understands, family isn't something you let go of easily, no matter how much they hurt you. Today, as I write these words, Mom is still in the hospital, her breath shallow but her heart still strong. I just got back from a night shift, sitting in the quiet living room, listening to Hannah cooking in the kitchen and Lily laughing with our little dog. But inside, I feel a storm coming. I know, with Mom's condition, the days ahead won't be easy. And I also know Dad and Caleb won't let things stay peaceful, they always bring trouble, as they have their whole lives. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. My life, as I've said, is a game of cards, and I'm preparing for the next move, not knowing what card will be turned over. But for Hannah, for Lily, and for Mom, I'll play this hand to the end. Although I was born and raised in Reno, I never thought I'd step foot in a casino, not because I hate gambling, but because those places always bring back memories I'd rather bury. The clanging bells of slot machines, the smell of cigarette smoke mixed with cheap liquor, and the vacant stares of people trapped in dreams of hitting it big. All of it feels like a reminder of what destroyed my family. But that night, I had no choice. I had to find Dad and Caleb, not to save them, but to beg them, just this once, to do the right thing, visit Mom before it was too late. I drove my old pickup truck through the neon-lit streets of downtown Reno. It was nearly 10 p.m., but the city glowed as if it never slept. I parked in front of the Silver Strike, a mid-tier casino at the corner of Virginia Street. It wasn't as glamorous as the spots in Las Vegas, but it was big enough to draw players like Dad and Caleb, people who always thought one more hand could change their lives. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the anger rising in my chest. Hannah had warned me not to go, saying I was only hurting myself, but I couldn't sit still while Mom lay in the hospital, her breaths growing weaker by the day, and Dad and Caleb didn't care. The glass doors of the Silver Strike swung open, and I was pulled into another world, blinding lights from hundreds of slot machines, laughter mixed with curses, and a stifling atmosphere that made me feel like I was suffocating. I scanned the crowd, searching for the familiar figures of Dad or Caleb. The people around me were a mix, old men with half-burned cigarettes dangling from their lips, young women in sparkly dresses giggling with high rollers. I felt out of place, like an outsider in a temple of greed. I headed deeper into the poker table area, where I knew Dad often hung out. He used to brag about the days he won big here, as if they were medals of honor. Finally, I spotted him, Henry Brooks, sitting at a poker table near the corner of the room. He wore a wrinkled shirt, his silver hair disheveled, and his bloodshot eyes betrayed sleeplessness or booze, probably both. Next to him was a meager stack of chips, a clear sign he was losing. Caleb was a few tables away, holding a glass of whiskey, laughing with some guy in a cheap suit. He looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and a patchy beard. Seeing them, I felt a sharp pain in my chest, not out of pity, but because I realized they'd gone too far, so far I wasn't sure I could pull them back. I approached Dad's table, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dad," I called, loud enough for him to hear over the noise. He looked up, his tired eyes flashing with defensiveness. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" His voice was hoarse, like he'd just been arguing with someone. "I need to talk to you, and Caleb, too." I glanced at Caleb, but he was still laughing, oblivious to me. "It's about Mom." Dad shrugged, pushing a few chips into the center of the table, as if I were just an annoyance. "Your mom's fine, isn't she? The hospital's taking care of her. Now, let me focus, all right? This hand's important." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms to keep from exploding. "Mom's not fine, Dad. She's dying. The doctors say she doesn't have much time. Can you, just this once, visit her?" Dad paused, but only for a second, then smirked, that bitter smile I'd seen 100 times. "Don't be dramatic, Ethan. Clara's always been strong. She'll pull through. As for me, I need to win this hand to pay off some debts you wouldn't understand." I felt the blood rush to my head. "Pay off debts? You think Mom's going to live long enough for you to pay off debts? Do you know how long Hannah and I have been taking turns at the hospital? Lily, your granddaughter, brings drawings to her every day while you sit here throwing money at meaningless cards." My voice was louder than I intended, and a few people nearby started glancing over. Dad glared at me, standing up from his chair, knocking over his drink. "Don't you dare raise your voice at me, you insolent brat. Who do you think you are, huh? Some holier-than-thou son taking care of your mom just for her insurance money, right? His words cut into me like a knife. I'd been paying for mom's life insurance for years, ever since dad stopped because he ran out of money. I did it not for the money, but to give mom some comfort, knowing she'd leave something for Lily, for her future. But hearing dad say that in front of a crowd of strangers hurt me deeply. What did you say? I growled, stepping closer. You dare say I'm in it for the money? You, who hasn't set foot in the hospital? Who hasn't even looked at mom since she got sick? Dad laughed, a scornful, mocking laugh. Oh, listen to this, Saint Ethan. You think you're better than me, better than Caleb? We're all the same, Ethan, you're just better at pretending. By now, Caleb had noticed the commotion and walked over, whiskey still in hand. What's going on, bro? He slurred. Why are you here ruining things? Can't you see Dad's playing? I turned to Caleb, clinging to my last shred of hope. Caleb, sober up. Mom's in the hospital, you know that? She could go any day now. Don't you want to see her one last time? Caleb shrugged, as if I'd just asked him to grab coffee. I'm busy. Besides, Mom doesn't need me. You've got it covered, right? You're always the family hero. It felt like the ground collapsed beneath me. I'd braced myself for Dad's indifference, but hearing Caleb, my little brother who used to follow me around, begging me to teach him how to shoot hoops, say that felt like another betrayal. Caleb, my brother, I said, my voice trembling. You used to love Mom. What are you now, a drunk living off borrowed money to gamble? Caleb slammed his glass on the floor, the sound of shattering glass silencing the area. Enough, Ethan, he yelled, pointing at my face. You think you know me? You live your life, I live mine. Don't stand there judging me. The crowd had now formed a circle around us, like spectators at a wrestling match. A few security guards started approaching but hadn't intervened yet. Dad, standing behind Caleb, laughed loudly, as if this were free entertainment. That's right, Caleb, show him who he is. I shook my head, feeling hot tears welling up, not because I was scared, but because I realized I'd lost, not a card game, but the fight to save my family. Dad, Caleb, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. Mom doesn't need money. She doesn't need empty promises. She just needs to see you, just once. If you can't even do that, then don't call me your son or your brother anymore. I turned to leave, but Dad shouted after me, you dare turn your back on me? Who do you think you are, huh? A cowardly kid living off your mother's money? I stopped, turning to look at him one last time. You're wrong, I said, my voice cold. I live for my family, Hannah, Lily, and Mom. You only live for yourself. I walked out of the casino, leaving behind the noise, the lights, and the venomous words of Dad and Caleb. The cold Reno night air hit my face, but I felt nothing anymore. I just wanted to go home, hug Hannah, hug Lily, and pray Mom would still be there when I got to the hospital in the morning. I knew what had just happened would leave a scar, but I also knew I couldn't let it drag me down, not now, when Mom needed me most. The days following the confrontation at the casino, I lived like a hollow man. Every step I took, every breath I drew, was weighed down by the image of Mom lying in her hospital bed, her eyes fading but still forcing a smile to comfort me. I couldn't erase the venomous words of Dad and Caleb from my mind, but I also couldn't let them drag me under. Hannah and Lily were the only anchors keeping me upright. Hannah, with her gentle yet steadfast presence, always knew how to remind me I wasn't alone. Lily, with her colorful drawings and unexpected hugs, made me remember what I was fighting for. But deep down, I knew Mom's time was running out, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face it. Mom passed away on a Wednesday morning, as the first rays of sunlight slipped through the blinds at St. Mary's Hospital. I was sitting by her bedside, holding her hand tightly, when her breathing grew faint and then stopped. Hannah stood behind me, her hand on my shoulder, while Lily nestled against her mother, her eyes red but tearless. I didn't know what to say, no words could capture the pain tearing through my chest. Mom, the woman who sacrificed her entire life to keep our family together, who always put us above everything, was gone. I just sat there, staring at her peaceful face, wondering why life was so unfair. I wanted to scream, to punch the wall, to race to the casino and drag Dad and Caleb here to see what they'd missed. But I did nothing. I just held Lily, letting her cry into my chest, and felt Hannah's hand squeeze my shoulder. She's at peace now, Ethan, Hannah whispered. She's not in pain anymore. I knew she was right, but that truth didn't ease the ache inside me. It only made me realize I'd now have to live in a world without Mom. A few days later, we held Mom's funeral at a small church on the outskirts of Reno. It was a chilly morning, the sky gray, as if mourning with us. I stood before the casket, looking at the white lilies Lily had chosen, Mom's favorite flower. Hannah and Lily stood beside me, holding hands, and I felt their love like a small flame warming my heart. But then I saw them, Henry and Caleb, appearing at the church door, dressed sloppily, their faces wearing a mask of feigned grief. My blood boiled, but I held it in. This was Mom's day, not a day for arguments. Throughout the service, Dad and Caleb kept their distance, standing in the back row, whispering to each other. I tried to ignore them, focusing on the prayers and the stories people shared about Mom. An old friend of hers spoke about how Mom helped her through tough times after her husband's death. A colleague from the bookstore talked about Mom's patience and kindness, how she always found ways to make people smile. Those stories made me both proud and heartbroken, because I knew Mom deserved to be loved more, especially by her own family. After the funeral, people gathered at our house to offer condolences. I was busy greeting guests, thanking them for coming, while Hannah and Lily handled the food. I thought Dad and Caleb had left, but when I stepped out to the backyard to grab more chairs, I saw them standing there near the fence, smoking and talking with tense expressions. I took a deep breath, bracing myself, because I knew they hadn't come just to say goodbye to Mom. "Ethan," Dad called, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "Got a minute to talk?" I nodded, though I wanted nothing more than to tell them to leave. "What is it, Dad?" Dad stubbed out his cigarette on the ground, then looked me in the eye. "Your mom left a life insurance policy, right? About $2 million, I heard. I'm the one who bought that policy, Ethan. I think Caleb and I deserve a share." It felt like a slap to the face. I knew they'd bring up money, but I didn't expect them to be so brazen right after Mom's funeral. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger. "You think Mom left money so you and Caleb could keep throwing it at casinos?" Caleb stepped forward, his face flushed from either alcohol or anger. "I wasn't sure. Don't get high and mighty, Ethan. Dad's right, it's family money. We're family, too, aren't we? We need it to pay off debts, to start over. You can't keep it all for yourself." I let out a bitter laugh, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe their audacity. "Family? Where were you when Mom needed you? You didn't visit the hospital, didn't call, didn't do anything. And me, I've been paying the insurance premiums for years after you abandoned it. The policy names me as the sole beneficiary. You have no claim to it." Dad grabbed my arm, squeezing so hard it hurt. "You think you're smarter than me, huh? You think you can take all the money and cut out your father and brother? You don't have the right." I yanked my arm free, stepping back. "Don't touch me," I growled. "You want money? Earn it yourselves. The insurance is for Lily's future, to honor Mom. You don't deserve a single cent." Caleb lunged at me, shoving me against the fence, his eyes wild. "You'll regret this, Ethan, I swear it. We'll get our share one way or another." I pushed Caleb off, my blood pounding in my ears. "You dare threaten me in my own home, right after Mom's funeral?" I shouted, not caring if the neighbors heard. "You're shameless." Caleb stepped back, his face flushed, his eyes blazing, as if he might charge at me again. Dad, Henry, stood behind him, lips pressed tight, but I could see the cold calculation in his eyes. They hadn't come just to demand money, they came to test how far I'd bend. The air between us was taut as a wire, one small move away from snapping. I clenched my fists, ready to defend my family, even if it meant facing my own father and brother. Suddenly, a small but resolute voice rang out from the back door. "Stop." It was Lily, my daughter, standing there with blazing eyes, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in her hand. She wore the simple black dress from the funeral, her hair tied up high, but her expression held none of the innocence of a 10-year-old. Hannah stood right behind her, her face filled with worry, but she didn't stop Lily. "Lily, go back inside," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Let Dad handle this." But Lily shook her head, stepping closer, her small shoes clicking on the wooden floor. "No, Dad, I want to speak." She looked straight at Henry and Caleb, unafraid, despite the two men towering over her. I had never seen Lily like this, strong, fierce, as if she carried all of my mother's resilience within her. "Who are you to butt into grown-up business?" Caleb snapped, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Maybe he, too, was caught off guard by Lily's presence. "I'm Lily Brooks," she replied, her voice clear. "Your granddaughter, your niece, and I'm someone who loved Grandma, unlike you too." Her words were like a dagger, sharp and direct, making Caleb step back. Dad frowned but said nothing, crossing his arms, as if waiting to see what she'd do next. Lily raised the paper in her hand, her voice trembling slightly but brimming with determination. "I wrote this, I call it the deserving will. I wrote it for Grandpa and Uncle Caleb because you think you deserve Grandma's money." I wanted to tell Lily to stop, to pull her into my arms and shield her from the cruel words I knew Dad and Caleb could hurl, but something in her eyes, her resolve, her anger, her love for her grandmother, made me stay still. Hannah placed a hand on my shoulder, as if to say, "Let Lily do what she needs to do." Lily began reading, her voice cutting through the stifling silence. "This is what Grandpa and Uncle Caleb have done. 1. They're addicted to gambling. 2. They're in debt everywhere. 3. They live irresponsibly. 4. They're greedy. 5. They're selfish. 6. They didn't care for grandma when she was sick. 7. They didn't support the family. 8. They only care about money. She paused, taking a deep breath, then continued, and this is what you inherit: 0, nothing, because you did nothing to deserve grandma's love or this family's silence. A heavy, suffocating silence fell, as if the whole world held its breath. Dad and Caleb stood frozen, their faces shifting from anger to confusion, then to something I couldn't name, perhaps shame. Lily folded the paper, then turned to me, her eyes glistening with tears. Dad, I'm sorry for butting in. I knelt down, pulling Lily into a tight hug, feeling my own tears spill over. You don't need to apologize, I whispered. I'm so proud of you. I kissed her forehead, feeling her small heart pounding with adrenaline and emotion. Lily, my 10-year-old daughter, had just done what I hadn't dared to do for years: face Dad and Caleb, not with fists, but with the truth. Hannah stepped forward, wrapping her arms around both of us, and I felt the strength of our little family. But then Dad's voice broke through, hoarse and full of anger. That insolent brat. Is this how you raise your daughter, Ethan, to disrespect her grandfather in front of everyone? I stood, pulling Lily behind me, and looked straight into Dad's eyes. Lily didn't disrespect anyone, she spoke the truth, something you and Caleb have never faced. You want money? You want your share? There's nothing for you. That money is for Lily's future, to honor Mom, the woman you both turned your backs on. If you want to take it to court, go ahead, but I swear I'll fight to the end to make sure you don't touch a single cent. Caleb lunged forward, as if to hit me, but Dad raised a hand to stop him. Enough, Caleb, he said, his voice low. He looked at me, then at Lily, and I saw a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, as if Lily's words had touched a part of him I thought was long dead. Then he turned, pulling Caleb with him. Let's go, he said. This place isn't worth staying for. They left, their figures fading into Reno's blazing sunset. I stood there, feeling both relieved and weighed down. Lily held my hand, and I looked down at her, seeing a faint but resilient smile. Did I do the right thing, Dad? She asked. You did more than the right thing, sweetheart, I said, squeezing her hand. You made Grandma proud. That night, after Lily was asleep, Hannah and I sat in the living room, the light from the table lamp casting shadows across the room. Hannah held my hand, her voice gentle but firm. Ethan, I don't know where this will lead, but I know you did the right thing, and Lily, she's really special. I nodded, but my heart was still full of questions. What would Dad and Caleb do next? Would they give up or come back with more schemes? I didn't know. But I knew one thing: I wouldn't let them destroy my family or tarnish Mom's legacy. I opened Lily's sketchbook, looking at the deserving will she'd left on the table. Her childish handwriting was a reminder that family isn't just blood, family is those who stand up for each other, even when it's hardest. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. This fight wasn't over, but I'd made my choice. I would protect Hannah, protect Lily, and protect what Mom left behind, no matter the cost. And with Lily's brave act today, I knew I wasn't alone. The weeks following Mom's funeral, I lived in a state of constant tension. Every doorbell, every unknown phone number made me flinch, expecting it to be Dad or Caleb, back to demand or threaten. I had braced myself for every scenario, from a lawsuit over the insurance money to desperate calls begging for cash. But strangely, they did nothing: no calls, no messages, no appearances. Their silence brought both relief and unease, like I was waiting for a storm without knowing when it would hit. Hannah noticed my anxiety. One evening, as we sat on the couch after Lily had gone to bed, she took my hand, her eyes gentle but firm. Ethan, you can't keep living like this. You're letting them control you even when they're doing nothing. Let it go, at least for now. I sighed, squeezing her hand. You're right, but don't you see? They always find a way to ruin things, and after what Lily said, I'm afraid they'll retaliate or do something worse. Hannah gave a soft smile, the kind that reminded me she was my strongest support. Lily did the right thing, and so did you. You need to focus on us, on Lily, on our future. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the unease. I started checking our bank accounts more often, ensuring Mom's insurance money was safe in a trust for Lily. I also contacted a lawyer, just in case Dad or Caleb tried to sue. But as days passed, nothing happened. The silence stretched so long I began to wonder if they had truly vanished from my life. Then, one afternoon, about 3 months after the funeral, the doorbell rang. I was in the kitchen, helping Lily with her math homework, while Hannah was at the hospital for an afternoon shift. Who's that, Dad? Lily asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Let me check, I said, keeping my voice calm but inwardly preparing for the worst. When I opened the door, I could hardly believe my eyes. It was Dad, Henry, standing there in clean but worn clothes, his hair neatly combed, and his eyes no longer bloodshot like the last time I saw him. He looked different, gone was the arrogance or bitterness I was used to. Instead, there was a weariness, but also a hint of something like sincerity. "Ethan," he said, his voice low, "can I talk to you for a bit?" I hesitated, my hand still gripping the doorknob. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut, but another part, the part that remembered him teaching me to ride a bike, laughing loudly when we fished at Lake Tahoe, made me pause. "All right," I said, my voice cold. "But if this is about money, you can turn around now." Dad shook his head, raising a hand as if to reassure me. "It's not about that, I swear, I just want to apologize." I frowned, unsure if I'd heard him right. Apologize? For what? He looked down at his worn shoes, as if searching for words. "For everything, for not being there for your mom, for letting you and Lily bear the weight of what Caleb and I caused, for being a terrible father and grandfather." I stood frozen, feeling the ground shift beneath me. In my 37 years, I had never heard Dad apologize, not once. I wanted to believe him, but the scars he'd left were too deep, too painful. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling, "an apology doesn't change what happened. Mom's gone, and you weren't there, neither was Caleb." "I know," he said, his voice breaking, "and I'll live with that for the rest of my life. But I don't want to lose you, to lose Lily. I want to change, Ethan, truly." Lily, who had quietly stepped behind me, spoke up. "Is Grandpa telling the truth?" Her voice was still sharp, but it lacked the anger from the funeral. "Because if you're lying, I won't forgive you." Dad looked at Lily, and I saw his eyes glisten. "I'm not lying, Lily, I've done a lot of wrong, and now I want to make it right. I hope you and your dad will give me a chance." I looked at Lily, seeing her weigh his words, her lips pressed together, as if judging her grandfather. Finally, she gave a small nod. "Okay, but you have to prove it. I don't believe empty promises." Dad smiled, a sad but genuine smile. "Thank you, Lily, I'll try." After that meeting, I kept my distance from Dad but agreed to let him join a gambling addiction program Hannah found through the hospital. I didn't pay off his debts. I didn't want him to think money could fix everything, but I covered the program's cost, on the condition that he attend fully and not drop out. He agreed, and for the first time in years, I saw him genuinely try. He started volunteering at a community center, fixing things for homeless people. He told me, with a voice full of pride, about repairing a wheelchair for an elderly woman. "It's the first time I felt like I did something meaningful," he said. Caleb, on the other hand, was a different story. He didn't show up with Dad that day, and I heard he'd left Reno, likely for Las Vegas, to keep gambling. But about 6 months later, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, Caleb's voice came through, weak and hesitant. "Ethan, it's me, I need to talk." I nearly hung up, but something in his voice stopped me. "Go ahead," I said, not hiding my coldness. "I've hit rock bottom," Caleb said, his voice choking. "I lost all my money, got kicked out of my place, and loan sharks are after me. I don't know what to do anymore. I just knew to call you." I wanted to yell at him, to say it was the price of his foolish choices, but then I thought of Mom, of how she always believed people could change. "Caleb," I said, "if you want to change, I'll help, but not with money. I'll get you into a program. Like Dad, you have to stand up on your own." Caleb was silent for a moment, then whispered, "Okay, I'll try." I got Caleb into the same addiction program as Dad. I also paid off part of his debts, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't want the loan sharks to hurt him, but I set clear boundaries. No more money, no more chances if he fell back into old habits. Caleb agreed, and I saw him start to change in small steps. He found a job at an auto repair shop, where he discovered a passion for engines and machinery. And just like that, 3 years passed since Mom's death. Dad and Caleb have become different people, not perfect, but better. Dad lives simply in a rented apartment, finding joy in helping the community. Caleb is now married to a woman named Emma, nearly 10 years his junior. They're expecting their first child in a few months. When he found out Emma was pregnant, Caleb called me, swearing he'd never let his child grow up in the shadow of gambling. And I believe him. Sitting in our living room, the familiar glow of the table lamp casting light on the walls, I feel a peace I never thought I'd find again. Hannah is in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for Lily, who's at the dining table, sketching and humming a children's song. Moments like these, simple, warm, are what I've fought to preserve. But I know that to truly close the past and open a brighter future, I need to do something, not just for Hannah and Lily, but for Dad and Caleb, too, not because I owe them, but because I want to prove that a broken family can still be mended, not with money, but with love and responsibility. One early fall morning, I drove to Dad's apartment in East Reno. He was on the balcony, watering his potted plants, tending to them like treasures. Seeing Dad, Henry Brooks, once proud of his towering construction projects, now content with a small garden, filled me with a mix of pride and bittersweetness. He's come a long way, not just escaping gambling, but reclaiming his self-respect. Ethan, you're here early, he said, a smile spreading across his face, his eyes bright under the brim of an old baseball cap. I need to talk to you, I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the emotions welling inside. I've been thinking a lot, and I want you to have a better place to live, somewhere with space, trees, fresh air. I bought a small house in Sparks, just outside Reno. It has a big garden, and I think you'll love it. Dad stopped watering, staring at me in disbelief. Ethan, are you serious? I don't deserve that. I've caused you too much pain. I shook my head, stepping forward to place a hand on his shoulder. Dad, I'm not doing this because I think you deserve it or not. I'm doing it because I want you to live well, to be the man Mom always believed you could be. And for Lily, she needs a grandfather, not just someone who made mistakes. Dad was silent, his eyes glistening, then he hugged me, tighter than any hug I'd ever gotten from him. Thank you, Ethan, he whispered. I promise I won't let you down again. The house in Sparks is a single-story home, painted pale beige, with a white picket fence and a garden big enough for Dad to indulge his love of plants. I also bought him a new pickup truck to make it easier for him to get around and continue his volunteer work at the community center. On moving day, Hannah and I helped him settle in, while Lily ran around the garden, pointing out spots where she wanted flowers planted. Grandpa, you have to plant sunflowers, she exclaimed. Grandma loved sunflowers. Dad laughed heartily, agreeing instantly, and I saw a joy in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Meanwhile, Caleb was building a new life. After over a year at the auto repair shop, he'd become a skilled mechanic, trusted by colleagues and customers alike. One evening, he asked me to meet at a small coffee shop near downtown Reno. He sat there, wearing a clean button-up shirt, no longer the haggard figure of the past. Emma sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on her pregnant belly, her smile radiant. Ethan, I've got something to say, Caleb began, his voice hesitant. I want to open my own repair shop. I've learned enough, and I think I can do it, but I need some capital. I studied Caleb, searching his eyes for any hint of deceit or delusion, like the days he was lost to gambling, but all I saw was sincerity and the nervous hope of a man about to become a father. Caleb, I said, I'll help you, not because I want you to owe me, but because I believe you can do this. I'll give you $500,000 from Mom's fund, but this isn't money to burn, it's for you to build a future for Emma, your kid, and yourself. Caleb looked at me, his eyes red. Emma squeezed his hand, whispering something, and he nodded. Thank you, Ethan, he said. I swear I won't let you down, not this time. 6 months later, Caleb's shop opened. It wasn't big, just a small garage on the outskirts of Reno, but he named it Clara's Auto, in honor of Mom. On opening day, Hannah, Lily, and I came to celebrate. Lily brought a drawing of a shiny car under the sun, with, "Congratulations, Uncle Caleb," written across it. Caleb hugged her, laughing loudly, and I saw him glow with the pride of a man who'd found himself again. That fall, we held Thanksgiving dinner at Dad's new house in Sparks. It was a chilly evening, but the house was filled with light and laughter. Hannah made roasted turkey and mashed potatoes, while Emma brought a homemade pumpkin pie. Lily ran around the table, giggling with Caleb's 4-month-old son. Dad sat at the head, sharing stories of his youth, of walks with Mom by Lake Tahoe, and of the mistakes he'd learned to fix. Caleb, sitting nearby, talked about the challenges of starting his business. When we raised our glasses, I stood, my voice trembling with emotion. I want to thank everyone here, I said, looking around the table. Thank you, Hannah, for always being my light. Thank you, Lily, for teaching me about courage. Thank you, Dad, for not giving up. Thank you, Caleb, for finding yourself again. Thank you, Emma, for giving Caleb a beautiful son. But above all, I want to thank Mom, Clara Brooks, for teaching us that family isn't just blood, it's love, responsibility, and forgiveness. Everyone fell silent, then Dad raised his glass, his voice choked with emotion. To Clara, he said, and we all echoed, to Clara. The evening passed with laughter, stories, and happy tears. As I looked around the table, seeing Dad smile at Lily, Caleb holding Emma's hand, Hannah cradling our sleeping nephew, I knew we'd overcome the darkness. The future ahead might not be perfect, but it was bright because we'd chosen to stand together, to love, and to live true to what Mom left behind. As night fell, I stood in the garden, looking up at Nevada's starry sky. I felt Mom somewhere, smiling down on us, and I knew she'd be proud, not for the money or our achievements, but because we'd found each other and the true meaning of family.